Well, it's December the 29th, 2021. We're nearing New Year's. And I want to address something today which kind of has been kind of on my mind for a while. And the latest move with the Democrats after the Build Back Better bill has got put on hold at least and for reprocessing. They've now moved back to their so-called voting rights bill. And this raises an issue which has been basically this ongoing big Democrat lie. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Republicans and commentators have really failed to really address just how outrageous what the Democrats are doing and saying is. I mean, yes, they do actually address the specific policies and why they're not good policies and all. But let's go a little bit bigger. It's fundamentally a major plan of deception. I mean, let's be blunt. What they're basically advocating is loosening the safeguards on voting so that more illegal votes can occur, and they're saying that that improves democracy. Let's look at the California plan to send out absentee ballots to literally everybody who's on the voter roll. And we know that a lot of these people have moved, that many of these ballots are going to fall into the wrong hands. So many that it's going to be almost impossible to trace down illegal votes. And who says that the law enforcement of California really wants to do that? I mean, after all, they're the ones that's trying to loosen up the system in the first place. This is obviously for a purpose, because they feel that they have more people that are willing to cheat than 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 the Republicans do, let's say. And of course, the Democrats make a big deal when they find one single vote that was illegally cast by some Republican, and they can crow and all they want. But in reality, that's probably misleading on what the real demeanor or the nature of that kind of voting is. Now, and so now they've got this voting bill which they're proposing, which would do all kind of crazy stuff, like have a mandatory registration on the same day, so you couldn't even verify if they were legal or not. They wanted to have uniform absentee balloting everywhere. They wanted to have a ban voter ID, provide government funding for candidates, and to just do a lot of things of this sort to completely scramble the electoral system. Okay. And I think even something about trying to basically say any change in the law had to be approved by the Department of Justice, which of course is run by Democrats. So that's, in fact, even when Republicans are in it, sort of run by Democrats or Democrat-leaning Republicans, right? So that doesn't sound like a very good idea, to be quite blunt. And so, at any rate, that's what's afoot in this bill. Of course, right now, in order to pass it, they would have to end the filibuster. And so far as we know, Joe Manchin's a definite no on that, as is Kristen Sinema. So given that, and maybe some other people, but they don't want to have to vote. So this is probably, the current version is just a political stunt, probably. I mean, every time they bring it up, leaves you kind of wondering, well, what will happen next? But will somebody weaken? But in reality, this is probably more than anything else a propaganda move to try to appease the radical left in their party, who have been suffered a bit of a setback here on the refusal on the turn down by Joe Manchin on the current form of the Build Back Better bill. And so they're going to throw this thing out, and they're going to put all those things like the democracy's at threat because of Republicans. Now, democracy's at threat because of Democrats. The Democrat Party is the most misnamed party there ever was. It's about power, not democracy. I mean, after all, remember the Democratic Republic of Korea, right? All these neo-Marxist regimes always like to say they're democratic, but in reality, they're not particularly. And the Democrat Party has not had a history of being really a group of good guys when it comes to ethical voting practices and so forth. They're known for machine politics. For years, they've been known for voter fraud. And even if it isn't happening on that election, it is the trend historically. And so it creates a lot of suspicion when they behave the way they do. I mean, now a lot has been made of, the situation. For instance, former President Trump's claim that, about the voting fraud and all that. And the fact of the matter is that I no doubt that to a great extent President Trump simply wants to believe what he wants to believe. That's the nature of the individual, and so that's that. And with the recount, which was done by definitely not a pro-Democrat organization in Arizona, came out with roughly the same count, slightly more for Biden than he actually got in the official count. The amount was so close that it would probably indicate that it was an authentic count, and all the claims about Dominion voting machines apparently were kind of bogus. So, at any rate, that's true. But the problem is nothing in that recount really got into the issue of were all the voters on the voter rolls actually legal voters. That was not looked into, and I know the Justice Department threatened to intervene if they looked into that, because that's where if there is anything wrong going on, that's where it would be, not in the not so much in the counting itself. There's little glitches in counting all the time, but I don't think that the counting is going to solve the problem of illegal voters, because remember, those ballots are separated from the data about who they are when they're being counted, so you don't know who they are. So there's no way to go back and say, the person that registered at some vacant lot or something really was real or not, right? So at any rate, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like, because it helps out with the algorithm, and I appreciate any comments you have. I know that people are really fired up on this issue. But what I think that what I'm getting to is that the Democrats are continually saying all these lies and are really not being directly challenged to just how unethical and unscrupulous what they're saying is. I mean, Republicans just seem to not want to directly engage them on just how deceptive they're being. I mean, and they're so I think that's one thing that we have to watch out for. And the problem I see down the road is this, that in the short term, we'll probably be able to block them. But someday, they're going to get enough of a majority in the Congress where it won't be 50-50. There won't be a Joe Manchin or a Kirsten Sinema to say no, and they probably will go ahead and do these sorts of things. And that's when our constitutional system essentially would break down. And one thing I will say, there's a lot of talk about this insurrection, which we now know I think pretty much definitely was not an insurrection. In fact, it's getting to the point now where it's even become clear, I think, in a recent book that's come out, that essentially the riot at the Capitol actually destroyed what Trump's real plan was. His plan was never anything about violence. It was about a group of people challenging the election under this 1876 election law. And while I've held the viewpoint that effort was only doomed to failure, because I think no matter what had been done, I think ultimately various powers would have ruled differently. And nothing the vice president said or did would have stood. I think that basically what would have happened is that Pelosi and Schumer, controlling their respective bodies, would have simply ignored the vice president, went back and voted to accept the ballots, and any attempt by Trump to challenge it in court would be turned down by the Supreme Court, and Biden would have been inaugurated. And the entire bureaucracy in Washington wanted that to happen, and so they would have taken orders from him. In the final analysis, he would have been sworn in by some judge somewhere, and it might have created a constitutional crisis like they're always talking about, but ultimately the bureaucracy would have followed Biden. And I'm not for that. I'm not for Biden, but I'm saying that's what would have actually happened. And so that's why the whole effort was a big mistake. And what really is bad about it, in a way, is not only did it destroy the whole process to a degree, but I really see that sets a pattern where the Democrats themselves in a future election may very well do what Trump was trying to do and might actually succeed. Because unfortunately, the bureaucracy and the people that control law enforcement and control the military and the national security state are going to back them, I think. And so that's the bad thing that Trump did here, really, is that he set a precedent for a future Democrat success on an effort that he really didn't have any chance of succeeding after the Supreme Court had ruled against him. So at any rate, that's my viewpoint on that subject. But I say what really is disgusting is this Democrats' continual thing that somehow the Republicans are threatening democracy by simply putting some very modest voter ID regulations in place. If you're not cheating, then what's the problem with voter ID? I don't see one. Anyway, that's my thought for today. And but I think we got through a bad year here, and we were able to hold the system together for one more year. And if we can hold it together for one more year and win an election, things will be better for a while anyhow. So at any rate, and Happy New Year's coming up. I'll probably make another video around on New Year's Day, but I'll close this one for now, and links to my social media addresses are below, and until next time.